I always thought Clumsy was my middle name. The tray shook, the coffee flew, and customers' eyes narrowed as if every drop were a personal insult. That morning, though, the mistake had a zip code and a last name. I bumped into the suit of a man who looked like he'd been drawn with a ruler. Crisp white shirt, a watch worth more than my entire year of college. "I'm sorry, sir." "Don't worry," he said, but the way he dabbed the stain away was like swatting a mosquito. "Watch where you're going," the manager growled behind me. "Yes, ma'am." I breathed, smiled at the next table. "Good morning, may I take your order?" And wrote with my head because my pen had vanished and the bills didn't allow me to waste time. "My name is Luna. Waitress by day, makeshift intern by night, law student when life lets me." In that old cafe on Mangueira Square, I already knew each customer's quirks by heart. The gentleman with scrambled eggs, mango juice, and coffee with 2 sugars. The waffle guy with watermelon juice and 1 sugar. The other one, strong coffee, cheese toast, and hard-boiled eggs. I took mental notes, smiled back, and headed to the kitchen before Manager Francis could find another reason to put me down. "One more of those and I'm docking your pay for the whole day. Got it, Luna?" I got it, ma'am, but I didn't accept it. I stored that humiliation the way you keep a receipt, because one day, when my diploma arrived, I'd charge interest for moral damages. That's when she ran in, breathless, her belly leading the way like a cry for help. "Miss, please help me. They want to take me." Behind her, 2 suit-and-tie types who looked like they'd never worked a graveyard shift, followed by a cop with his chest puffed up with cheap authority. "That's her. She robbed my client's house," one said, and the officer added that he had to take her in to testify. The girl trembled, one hand on her belly, the other gripping a torn purse strap. "What's your name?" I asked. "Andrea," she whispered. "I used to clean there. I didn't take anything." "The guilty always say the same thing," the client's lawyer sneered. Manager Francis, who loved a spectacle, folded her arms, satisfied. I could have stayed quiet and kept my day, but there's a part of me God put in that doesn't know how to obey cowardice. "Do you have an arrest warrant?" I asked, looking the officer straight in the eye. He cleared his throat. "She was reported." "Then you don't. And this young woman is pregnant. The law grants special protection. No in flagranti, no formal warrant, no lawyer, no one goes anywhere." "A waitress is going to lecture us on law?" the attorney scoffed. "A law student," I replied, and finished what I'd spent the night studying. "Do you have material evidence, camera footage, anything linking the accusation to her possession, besides words?" The officer's gaze wavered. "Enough theater," the lawyer snapped. "Officer, proceed." "No," said a voice I didn't expect to hear. A man rose from the corner table. "I am Andrea S. attorney, at least until the officer returns with the paperwork the law requires. My name is Davi Jimenez. And I assume this rushed accusation reeks of a police captain who has been shielding a politician in campaign season." I recognized the man with the perfect suit, the spilled coffee guy. He was looking at me like he'd just watched a chess piece change squares. The cop backed off, somewhere between angry and ashamed. "Let's go," he muttered to the arrogant lawyer. "This is bigger than you think," the man hissed at Davy. "No one is above the law, not you, not the arrogant politician who's your boss," Davy answered in a tone so calm it stung. Andrea sobbed under her breath. "Thank you, thank you." I held her hand. "It's going to be all right." "Thank you for defending me, Luna," said the voice in the expensive suit. I turned. He gave a half-smile. "I hear you study law." "I'm in my final semester," I answered, heart pounding. "I'll need someone brave to help on this case," Davy said. "I don't know." "I'll pay you," he added. The money would help, but that wasn't why I said yes. It was the way Andrea held her belly like a fortress. "Okay, I'll help." The manager waited for Davy to leave before attacking. "Where you are, trouble follows, Luna. I don't know why my father hired you." I took better care of him than you did, I answered without fear. What did you say? You heard me. One more and you're out. No more. I quit. Who's going to hire you, bold girl? The world, I thought, but said only, I'll be fine. I walked out of that cafe with a coffee-stained smock and the feeling I fit somewhere else. On a bench in the square, Davy waited with 2 folders and an invitation in his eyes. Sit. We need the safest way to secure paternity recognition without exposing Andrea to more abuse. There is a way, I said. Action for extramarital acknowledgement, court-ordered DNA, presumption upon refusal. Davy smiled. You know more than half the licensed colleagues. Don't say that, I replied, but something rose inside me. I planned to go home and cry with relief. Instead, I caught a bus to the old neighborhood where Andrea's aunt lived, knocked on the gate to offer a hot meal and an ear. The aunt had eyes that had learned too early the world is impatient with poverty. Andrea, lying on the couch, looked smaller than her belly. He said he loved me, Luna. Said he'd leave her, that I deserved it. I didn't judge. I fluffed her pillow and promised that as long as it depended on me, no one would lay a hand on her without a warrant and without respect. That night, I slept on the mattress on my studio floor, thinking about the officer who backed off, the arrogant lawyer, and mostly the look from the man with the pricey watch. I still didn't know his name. I didn't know I would need him, or that he would need me. The next day, while I organized paperwork at Davy's office, the world hit fast forward. The powerful client, a rising politician named Marcelo Duarte, decided justice is just bribery in a tie. He sent an aide with a fat envelope, 50 grand for Andrea to disappear and sign a deal. We don't accept, Davy said. The aide wiped sweat with a handkerchief. Everyone has a price. Not everyone, I answered and picked up my phone. The aide chuckled. Gonna record? I smiled back. Already recording, he blanched. See you at the DA's office, I added. We walked out with 2 pieces of evidence and a cold fear crawling our backs. Fear didn't stop strategy, only made it sharper. That's when he reappeared. The coffee man, sitting in our reception as if that were the most natural place for a millionaire. Gray suit, loosened tie, curious eyes. I brought this, he said, lifting a bag. Don't take it the wrong way, it's an advance. I opened it carefully. 2 simple skirt suits, 2 pairs of comfortable shoes, a new briefcase. I went speechless. You don't have to do this. I don't have to. I want to, he said. I watched you face a machine with your whole body trembling and still stand. I'm Raphael Valmont. I build big things, but sometimes I forget the small. I don't want to forget today. Davy walked in and narrowed his eyes. What's a Valmont doing in my office? Bringing good manners, I answered, before egos collided. Raphael smiled at Davy, unoffended. He said he was there because his injustices were of a different kind, but he knew how to recognize when someone did the right thing. And he added, looking at me, that sometimes the rich mess up and need to learn to apologize for spilled coffee and ignored lives. Outside, a storm was gathering. Marcelo Duarte reacted to the bribery video with the chill of a man with padded backing. He had his captain buddy intensify inquiries. 2 cops showed up on my street at 10 at night. You're coming today? They said. No paperwork, no shame. I was ready. I stepped out streaming live to 2 friends and to Davy, holding the prior harassment report in a folder, certainty in my chest. No warrant, no in flagrante. You know you can't, I said. One of them laughed. Who says I don't have one? I held out my hand. He stepped back, because he didn't. My upstairs neighbor came out with a pot in hand, because in modest buildings, solidarity knows how to make noise. 2 more windows opened. The street woke up. They left, scowling. That's when I understood the power of the collective. And I knew that as much as I wanted to, I wouldn't send Andrea back to a shelter. You sleep here, I said. I'll take the floor, she cried. "You're an angel, Luna." "I'm not. I'm stubborn." Raphael started showing up more than I thought possible. One afternoon, he brought his father's old law books with scribbled dedications. Another, he arrived with boxed meals from a neighborhood restaurant he bought so it wouldn't close during the pandemic. He didn't use money as a weapon, he used it as a bridge. One day he arrived with the last name put away and his childhood in hand. He sat on the office step, talked about a rigid father, an absent mother, the fiancée who left when she realized he only knew how to show affection by buying things. He looked at me like he was stating, not asking. "I mess up. I unlearn." I nodded. "I don't want gifts, Raphael. I want partnership." He breathed like a man agreeing to a traffic rule. The emergency hearing came. The judge, tired of cases without evidence, arched a brow when Davi requested protection for Andrea and authorization to collect genetic material at the hospital when the baby was born. I stepped in with a voice steadier than the belly on the aunt's couch. "Your Honor, the defendant is a public figure with a history of persecuting whistleblowers, and he tried to buy the plaintiff's silence." We filed the media. We filed the messages. The judge looked again, this time like a man seeing a map. "Granted." I walked out wanting to shout for joy, but settled for hugging Andrea gently so I wouldn't squeeze the baby dancing inside her. That's when Manager Frances showed up in the courthouse corridor, a notice fluttering in her hand. "Thought you'd gotten rid of me?" I laughed, not out of mockery, but because sometimes God's timing is comedic. "Ms. Frances, you're being formally notified for unpaid overtime, moral harassment, and unlawful withholding of tips." She paled. "Is this revenge?" "No, it's justice, so nobody else goes through what I did." She lowered her eyes. "I was wrong. I lost everything by mistreating the people who kept my counter standing. I believed the world owed me. I sincerely hope you treat the next Luna who walks through your door better," I said, and left with the feeling that life writes postcards back. Marcelo Duarte doesn't read postcards. He reads polls. His tanked when a local station aired snippets of the bribe video. He tried damage control with a press conference, a speech, rehearsed tears. He was cut off by a question no one expected. "Do you acknowledge the child to be born, Marcelo? The one Ms. Andrea says is yours?" He stammered. Claimed he was the victim of a setup. I, who hadn't been invited to any press conference, slipped in a side door someone left open. I walked to the mic and said recognition would come by court order, with or without his will, and that every poor woman disbelieved in this city deserved to watch a powerful man swallow his pride on live TV. The room held its breath. Raphael at the back gave a nod like he was saying, "Go." I went. The next night, someone keyed Davy's car. A message. He shrugged and walked. I flipped on the office lights, poured 3 coffees, and said, "We don't back down." Andrea arrived with a smile that looked like a miracle. "The baby moved," she said, placing my hand on her belly. "Cry, Luna," said the voice inside me. I did. Raphael waited at the door when I left. No suit. Simple shirt. Less tired eyes. He stood quiet for a second, like choosing a road. "I messed with you that first morning, treated you like an obstacle. Then I watched you raise a wall with your voice and hold a woman the world wanted to crush. I wanted to say I'm sorry." "I heard you," I said. He breathed deeper. "And I wanted to ask if I can stay, not to boss around, to learn, to help, to—" I lifted my hand, shaking a little, and he fell silent. "You can walk beside me, Raphael. That's all." He smiled like a man who'd just received the one thing he'd never known how to ask for. When Andrea went into labor, the city seemed to have agreed to look beautiful. Clear sky, good wind, a street vendor selling flowers on the hospital sidewalk. Davi brought the forms. I brought water and courage. Raphael brought silence and presence. The baby was born with a cry that sounded like an opening ceremony. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and cried without shame, joy and relief. The next day, the lab took samples. 2 weeks later, the result landed with the force of a door kicked in. Marcelo Duarte was the father. The judge entered it. There was child support. There was a name. There was that spot on the birth certificate so many try to steal from so many. Marcelo lost the race, gained a lawsuit, and finally learned that power is a loan, not an inheritance. Manager Francis, who had signed a small claims agreement for back pay and an apology, stopped by the cafe where I no longer worked and handed me an envelope with a letter and a retroactive tip voucher. I read it on the sidewalk with the sun on my face. She wrote she'd learned more in a month of falling than in 10 years of arrogance. I hoped it was true. Raphael opened a community kitchen in the family's old factory warehouse. Davi agreed to lend his name to the pro bono legal wing. Andrea, baby in her arms, spoke into the mic with the strength of someone who walked through fire and discovered her own body was the bridge. I, Luna, once called clumsy, stepped onto the little wooden stage at the opening and told them that the first time I raised my voice, my hands shook so hard it felt like an earthquake. I told them a millionaire thought I was invisible until he realized that when you know what you're remaking of yourself, you don't need to ask permission. I told them the law isn't just paper, it's people, and that a kitchen smelling of garlic and a project smelling of fresh paint can change fate too. At the end of the night, when the lights were low and empty glasses told stories, Raphael pulled me into the garden. The wind played with the bunting. He tried to speak, tripped over syllables, laughed at himself. "I'm not good with words without a contract," he said. I told him he was doing just fine. He breathed. "A millionaire messed with the wrong waitress, Luna, and the waitress messed up my world the right way. I want you to know that if I ever forget, you can remind me of who I promised to be." I leaned my forehead against his, small, intimate, whole. "Promise you'll remind me who I promised to be, too." "I promise." We sealed it with a hug that needed no witness. If you've made it this far, thank you. If anyone ever treats you like your life is worth less, remember that sometimes one voice saying no is enough for the whole city to listen. And if you want more stories where courage wears an apron, justice has a face, and love unlearns its arrogance, stick around. Tomorrow we'll serve coffee without spilling, stand up for whoever needs it, and if we do spill, we'll apologize while looking people in the eye. Because the real miracle is people standing, hand in hand, unafraid to call what's right by its name.